Hello there, Talk Straight family. This is Gina Coulter. I am thankful that I get to be here today bringing you more words that God is seeming to download to me faster than I can get them out of my mouth, but I'm thankful. And so I'm here to share that with you. I shared a few days ago around the season of new and taking thoughts captive, and sometimes how we can often, since we are bent towards sin and the negative, just kind of make all these assumptions and perceptions and the things that the enemy wants to do to get in our thinking and make us feel that we're alone and that we walk in shame or we're rejected or we're not loved and all of those things. And I wanted to tie that to something that God's impressing on my heart for myself personally, to be able to share that with you. And that is the sense of community. And when I think about how we have these thoughts that come in, and we can often make assumptions about things that aren't true, or perspectives that aren't true, or think of things in ourselves that are not true about ourselves, it robs us of the very thing that God has for us, and that's to be in community with others. Because when Satan can plant all this junk in our heads and cause all these divisions and make us feel like we're not worthy and that type of stuff, it makes us tend to be isolated and want to be by ourselves, because we don't feel like we want anybody to know really what goes on in our head. We don't want to be around people that we think reject us or we think leave us out or any of those kind of things. And so maybe that's you. I know that I tend to walk in that space sometimes, and there are seasons I go through where I tend to isolate. And I know God is calling me also in this new season to really be focused on the community that we all need to help each other walk together, to encourage one another, to speak truth to one another, to speak those things that maybe we really don't want to hear, but that we need to. We need that in our lives. And when we allow Satan to tell us that we're not worthy, that we are not welcome, that we're not loved, and all of those things that can divide and make us want to stay in isolation, being afraid to be vulnerable and share ourselves with others, we cut ourselves off from that very thing that God wants us to have. But Proverbs 27:17 says, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, therefore, encourage one another, build one another up, just as you are doing. Proverbs 27:6 says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. And lastly, in Ecclesiastes 4:9 and 10, two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if one falls, the other one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and doesn't have anybody to lift him up. And we're shown that verse in the greatest example in the Bible of Adam and Eve, right? Adam came. God knew that he couldn't do life alone. He needed a helper. He needed a mate. So he gave him Eve. That's our greatest example of that we need community, like Jesus and his disciples. Jesus didn't walk alone, even though he was a perfect man, and he probably realistically didn't need anybody, but he was an example to us to show us that to walk through this life, we need community. Jesus went to these disciples and he'd talk with them and he'd teach them and he'd ask them to pray with him. And that is the example that he sets for us in our lives. But if we're so busy listening to all of the lies in our head and not taking them captive to obey Christ, that tells us we need to be in community, we need to have friendships in our life, we need others that are willing to tell us the truth, we need to be in a place where we can be vulnerable with ourselves and allow others to be vulnerable with us. I feel convicted of that in myself. And so I don't know where you are with that, but I just felt like I wanted to encourage all of us in that space of making sure that we are doing a heart check with ourselves to really be intentional about creating community in our lives. When we want to isolate, making a pact with ourselves that maybe we have a list of friends that are in our circle, and we can be more intentional around when we get in that place where we are hearing the lies, when we're getting in that place where we feel like, yeah, you know what, I've been in the house by myself too long, I've really not seen anybody as often as I'd like, that we would make that pact with ourselves. Maybe it's, you set up for yourself, okay, once or twice a week, I'm going to see 1 or 2 different friends that I'm going to connect with. Going to coffee with someone, going to breakfast with someone, I don't know, what are things that you enjoy? For me, I like to walk, I like to go running, I like to paddleboard. So things like that are things that you enjoy, that you have that friend that will enjoy them with you. And I'll even take it a step further. What about those of you who are married? Do you intentionally create a date night and community with your spouse, and not just going out to eat or going for a cup of coffee, but do you intentionally do things not only that you like to do, but maybe that your spouse likes to do? And I'll bring it into your friendships too, that your friend likes to do. See, it's this community is this give and take, whether it's in our marriages with our spouses, whether it's with our friends. It is this place of laying your life down for your friends and your spouse, of like, I'm going to die to myself in being selfish, and I'm going to be selfless. So sometimes that means in our relationships that we're doing what other people might want to do so that we can learn more about them and grow closer to them as they're learning about their likes and dislikes and those type things. And it's so important in the days that we're in right now that we have that community, that we are, especially in the homes of those of us who are married, that have families, because our kids, if those of us that are married that have kids, those of us that are married and our kids have already gone away, you know that what I'm going to speak to is truth, is that our kids are watching how we interact within our marriages. Are we making date nights just like we might make a business appointment? Just like we might make an appointment to get our hair cut or our nails done. Or for men, maybe it's going to play golf with your friends, or whatever it is that guys do. But are we intentional in our marriages that our kids are seeing this is what a healthy, godly marriage looks like? That we are not just mom and dad inside the house, but we are friends. We are best friends. We do things together. We enjoy one another's company. And I think that far too many households this day, which is why we see the divorce rate as high as we do, which is why we see so many single parent households, is because I think it goes back to the root, or rather, I'll take away the I think. I know that it goes back to the root of Satan getting into the heads of married couples, those couples not taking the thoughts captive and applying them to the obedience of Christ, of how it says we are to be married in our home and as a spouse. And they're letting the lies get the best of them. And it is causing marriages to, instead of thinking about being selfless, they're thinking of being selfish. So it's easier to walk out the door instead of stay and commit and work on things that need to be worked on. It's easier to think about ourselves than think about our spouse, all while our kids might be watching this and learning how they are going to take those things into their relationships and then a marriage one day. So it's so important in our lives, the community that we have around us. And I'm convicted of this myself. I have work to do. I know these practices. I mean, my husband and I are pretty good at date night, or date days, we call it, because his business in real estate, he gets time during the week, during the day when our kids are at school, that we could spend together. So we've always had to be creative. And I'm thankful that we get a lot of the space that we do. But we've always walked in that place of date day or date night. But it's gotten a little complacent. Like, it's just dinner. Like, I've said to him, I feel like I'm 90. Like, that's all we do is go out to dinner. I want to do some things that are, what are things you like to do? Or I want to do some things sometimes that I like to do. Like, we have this new season of life where our kids are older and we can go enjoy some of those things that we each like to do. So I think it's going back to that. I think it's really being intentional of that in your marriages and even within your friendships? Do your kids see that you have healthy friendships, that you have friendships that you can grow with, that friends that they know that you cry with, that you laugh with, that are in your home, that they see you, okay, I'm going out with so-and-so and I'm going out with so-and-so. They see these healthy relationships and this healthy community in our lives. They will in turn emulate that in their own lives. And so I just felt really led to share that, because I think it ties to what I shared a few days ago around these thoughts we have in our head, and those thoughts that Satan puts in there. He just wants to use those to destroy us, to keep us out of community, to keep us out of healthy friendships and healthy marriages. And we've got to take the thoughts captive, the disobedient, sinful thoughts, and apply them to, like I talked about the other day, the obedience of Christ, even in our friendships, which is walking in community. Iron sharpens iron. We are to encourage one another. Two are better than one. Like, God gives us all of these things that we can take all those thoughts. Does he say to be alone? No, he says that we're to have community. So when we're alone and we're isolating, we're sort of kind of like in this place of disobedience. So in order to make it obedient to Christ, we need to get into community in our marriages, in our families, in our friendships. What are those things, even for those of you who have kids? You can be friends with your kids. Yes, you're a parent first and foremost, but you can also be friends with your kids. Do you invest in getting to know about them, their likes, their dislikes, being friends with them? Like, I know one practice that I started when my boys were little was they loved to go out for sushi. And we would go out for sushi. I'd take each of them separate, or I'd take each of them separate. And of course, now when I say let's go on a date, they kind of look at me sideways, but they are 16 and almost 19. And so I get a funny look when I'll say that now. But all growing up, it was always, okay, let's go on a date. And I always made a point to invest in them, in what they like to do, in just showing them that they're valued and they're loved. And we've got to take that in every relationship that we have. I've gotten a little lackadaisy. I won't tell a lie. It's something that in this new season, that along with those thoughts that God's working on in my head, he's also working on getting me better more often out in community, whether it's my kids, my husband, my friends. We need it. And I know for me that I feel so good after I'm around people. Hopefully you do too. And I hope that this word blessed you in whatever way you need. I hope that it challenges you if you tend to be like me and tend to isolate and go through those seasons, that it would maybe encourage you to take action, to put steps in place for yourself that you can hold yourself to, making a pact with yourself that when you find yourself in that place of isolating, that you will make yourself reach out to someone or go out with someone to get yourself in that place of community, so that you can be refreshed and walk in peace and enjoy this life God's given us. I pray and I hope you have an amazing week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.